It's probably the largest engineering project in the Arctic ever, when the United States sent lots of cargo and many thousand men to Thule to establish an airbase.
Camp Century, the nuclear-powered city America buried under Greenland's ice in 1959. You've probably seen the TikToks, the headlines screaming, "Scientists just discovered hidden base under the ice," AI-generated images of pristine tunnels glowing blue, millions of views, all fake. We didn't discover Camp Century. We built it. We powered it with a nuclear reactor. And when the ice started crushing it, we abandoned it, left 53,000 gallons of radioactive waste buried under the ice. That part? That's real. And here's the nightmare. The ice is melting. Right now, the waste is surfacing, and there's no plan to stop it. Let me take you back. January 1960. 40 feet under the Greenland ice sheet, you're standing in a corridor lit like a subway station. Diesel fumes hang in the air. Somewhere deeper, a nuclear reactor hums. 200 men eating steak dinners in a heated mess hall, watching American TV, playing pool. This isn't a research station. It's a prototype. Project Iceworm. The plan to bury 600 nuclear missiles under the ice, all aimed at Moscow. But the ice didn't care about our plans. And now, 60 years later, it's giving everything back. Height of the Cold War. The Army has a problem. If the Soviets launch a first strike, every missile silo on American soil becomes a smoking crater within 30 minutes. But what if we hid our nukes somewhere they'd never think to look? What if we buried them in ice? The Army sells it to the public as polar research. Science in the Arctic. They invite Danish officials to tour Camp Century, smile for cameras, talk about studying glaciers. But the classified blueprints tell a different story. One involving 600 nuclear missiles in 2,500 miles of tunnels carved into the Greenland ice sheet. Project Iceworm, the most ambitious and insane weapons program ever conceived. But first, they had to prove you could actually live inside a glacier. So they built Camp Century fast. Here's how fast. Summer of 1959. They bring Swiss snow millers to Greenland industrial machines designed to chew through alpine glaciers. These things are beasts. They carve trenches, 26 feet wide, 28 feet deep, straight into the ice cap. Then, cut and cover. Hollow out the trench. Drop in a prefab steel building curved roof, built to handle compression from above. Bury it under ice. Move 50 feet down. Repeat. Within months, they have 21 separate tunnels, a hospital, machine shops, a theater, living quarters for 200 men, and, at the center of it all, the crown jewel, a nuclear reactor under a glacier. Now normally, you'd think twice about putting a nuclear reactor inside a glacier. The ice is constantly moving, shifting, groaning under its own weight. But the Army wasn't thinking about normally, they were thinking about survival, about staying operational after the bombs fell. January 3rd, 1965, 0800 hours. The reactor room. 3 engineers stand at the control panel, red lights everywhere. One of them reaches for the main switch, hesitates. "You sure this thing won't melt through the ice?" The lead engineer, a guy who's run reactors on submarines, ships, you name it, looks up at the ceiling. Solid ice, 40 feet between him and daylight. Only one way to find out. He flips the switch. The PM2A rumbles to life, 2 megawatts. The lights in the corridor flicker, then stabilize. For the first time in human history, nuclear power is running inside a glacier. The panel glows green. Someone exhales. It works. For now. Because here's the thing the Army miscalculated. They assumed the ice was stable, solid, a permanent foundation you could build on. But glaciers aren't foundations. They're rivers, frozen rivers moving at a crawl, but moving nonetheless. Camp Century sat on ice, flowing toward the coast at 4 feet per year. 4 feet doesn't sound like much, but when you're 40 feet underground, surrounded by millions of tons of ice pressing in from all sides, 4 feet becomes catastrophic. Colonel David Oken wakes up in his bunk. Something's wrong. The wall next to his head, it wasn't curved yesterday. Now it's bowing inward, 6 inches. He gets up. walks the corridor. The ceiling has a crack, running 40 feet. Wasn't there last week. In the mess hall, a support beam is bent. Not broken, bent. Like someone grabbed a steel I-beam with bare hands and twisted it. "We're living inside a groaning beast," he tells his crew. And the beast is waking up. 2 weeks later, they repair that tunnel, reinforce the beams, fresh steel, fresh rivets. 2 weeks after that, crushed again. The ice doesn't care about repairs. It just presses. The reactor housing starts to deform. And once a nuclear reactor starts bending out of shape, you don't stick around to see what happens next. By 1966, the Army quietly pulls the plug. Project Iceworm. The plan to hide 600 missiles in 2,500 miles of ice tunnels is declared physically impossible. The ice is too unstable, too unpredictable, too alive. In 1967, they evacuate Camp Century for good. They shut down the reactor, haul it back to the States in pieces. But everything else? The diesel generators, the sewage, the chemicals, the 53,000 gallons of radioactive coolant from the reactor's secondary systems, the 200,000 liters of diesel fuel contaminated with PCBs, some of the most toxic chemicals ever mass-produced. They leave it all, buried under the ice, sealed in place, out of sight. The thinking was simple. The ice is thousands of years old. It's not going anywhere. Let it bury the evidence. Nature will keep our secret. But that was 1967. The world was colder then. Greenland's ice sheet was gaining mass, not losing it. They didn't have climate models predicting what would happen 50 years later. Fast forward to 2016. NASA does a routine flyover using ice-penetrating radar. And there it is on the scans, the entire layout of Camp Century. Still intact, still frozen. The tunnels have collapsed, sure, but the waste? Exactly where they left it. And here's where the checkmate happens. The ice is melting, not in 100 years. Right now, the surface of the Greenland ice sheet is losing mass at 0.08 meters per year, and it's accelerating. Some models say that waste could start surfacing by 2090. Others say sooner, because climate change doesn't follow a schedule. It compounds. So let's do the math. 53,000 gallons of radioactive coolant, 200,000 liters of diesel contaminated with PCBs, all of it currently frozen in place. But the ice holding it? That ice is turning to meltwater, and meltwater flows to the ocean. Now Denmark, which owns Greenland, has a problem. The base was built without their knowledge of the real mission. They thought it was science. They signed off on a research station, not a nuclear missile prototype. And now they're stuck with the cleanup bill. Except there's no cleanup plan. You can't just dig it out, it's 40 feet down in fractured ice. You can't cap it, the ice is moving. You can't stabilize it, the glacier is shedding mass faster every year. You can only watch and wait for it to surface. This is the part where I'm supposed to tell you there's a solution, a silver lining. But here's the thing, there isn't one. This isn't a story about a hidden city being discovered. It's a story about hubris, about engineers so focused on beating the Soviets that they forgot to ask the glacier for permission. We tried to hide nukes in the ice to stay safe from the Russians. Turns out, the real enemy was physics. And physics doesn't negotiate. Look, history is filled with buried secrets, trying to claw their way out. If you want to know about the other Cold War nightmare waiting under the ice, the one in Alaska that's even worse, hit subscribe, because Camp Century isn't the only reactor we buried and forgot about. It's just the one they admitted to. Camp Century was supposed to be a fortress, a last line of defense buried so deep that no enemy could ever find it. Instead, it became a tomb. And now, 60 years later, the tomb is cracking open. The city isn't coming back. But the waste? That's arriving right on schedule. Oh, and one more thing NASA found on those scans. 27 other anomalies under the Greenland ice sheet. Other bases, other projects. All still buried. Camp Century was just the one they told us about.